Done deals today as well. Michael Bridge, let's start with what has been a long-running saga, but it is close to coming to an end. Where do things stand with Manchester United and their pursuit of Benjamin Šeško tonight?
Well, good evening, Danish. They're very close indeed. We know there's been a medical today, and all being well for Manchester United, will be presented to his new supporters at Old Trafford tomorrow as Manchester United face Fiorentina. Now, big day for Manchester United, not just because they've got a very, very good player in the door, but Sir Jim Ratcliffe opening the doors for a new Carrington, a new training centre. Sir Jim Ratcliffe saying it wasn't up to scratch before. So a big day for Manchester United. And a reminder as well, it's a lot of money, but they agreed to do with Leipzig worth an initial 66.3 million, 7.37 million in performance-related add-ons. So it's a big, big move for him. Ruben Amorim said time after time after time last season, they need a bit more on their forward line, and that forward line is going to look very different next season.
You mentioned very different. Matheus Cunha, Brian Mbeumo, and imminently Benjamin Šeško. They've gone for it, haven't they? They've spent big in this window, haven't they?
They have. And look, it's unheard of to think of Manchester United not in Europe, but maybe just 1 year for a reset. We know Ruben Amorim said constantly, even when he was at Sporting, he likes to join clubs in pre-season. He doesn't like joining mid-season. And he said it in his press conferences here. They were very close to winning the Europa League. It was a very poor league position, but they have this reset now. And it's a very formidable front three. Matheus Cunha's been there for some time. Brian Mbeumo's been done for a while. He was on that tour of the United States. And now Benjamin Šeško. So it's a new look United. They've spent big money and they're going for it.
You say they're going for it. I mean, Benjamin Šeško, for one, made it very, very clear that it was Manchester United and that's all he wanted. Now, that's impressed United, hasn't it?
Yeah, because we talk about players wanting to play in Europe and Champions League. Man United had none of that to offer. But you do wonder, he's 22 years of age. We might be sitting here in 12 months' time talking about Manchester United being back in the Champions League. We don't know. I think it's a thank you to Sir Alex Ferguson, really. I mean, it's Manchester United. It's a historical football club. It's still one of the biggest clubs in world football. And there's that excitement there from Šeško, and I'm sure that's it. You know, Newcastle couldn't have done any more. And I think we've got to say that for Newcastle. They put in big money, big wages, but ultimately he wants to play for Man United.
Look, Šeško's imminent arrival is going to have repercussions elsewhere in that squad because it's going to throw further doubt on Rasmus Højlund's future, Michael. Clearly his game time is going to be impacted by Šeško's arrival. Look, RB Leipzig did want to bring in Rasmus Højlund on loan, but he's been very bullish, publicly at least, about wanting to fight for his place in the Manchester United first team. However, it is now thought that bids of around £40 million would be considered by Manchester United for Rasmus Højlund. Now, interestingly, he wasn't one of those 5 players that we were talking about throughout this transfer window that Manchester United were willing to listen to offers for. Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Tyrell Malacia, Antony, and Alejandro Garnacho. Let's talk about Garnacho because there have been developments, haven't there?
There have been developments. One thing we've known all summer is that Chelsea like the player, but Manchester United want £50 million to sell Alejandro Garnacho this summer. It's not as if they don't think he's a good player. It's just, it looks like he needs to move on in terms of maybe the relationship he's got with Ruben Amorim. He was very unhappy with his Europa League final snub. He's made that very public. But the key from Chelsea's point of view, they think they can sign Garnacho for less than Manchester United's asking price. But there hasn't been a bid yet. And going back to Manchester United's side, he's got 3 years remaining on his contract at United. You feel that this probably will get done, but for what price, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Manchester United valuing him at £50 million because they'll look at other players that have gone for that amount as well, the likes of Anthony Elanga from Nottingham Forest and Newcastle, Noni Madueke, who actually left Chelsea for Arsenal. But I mentioned a couple of those other players. Jadon Sancho and Antony are 2 of the big ones that potentially could bring in money for Manchester United. Borussia Dortmund, we're told, remain in talks with Sancho's representatives over a deal, while dialogue remains open with United. No agreement on either at the moment, though it is thought he could be available for significantly less than the £25 million obligation price that Chelsea had when they signed him on loan last season. As for Antony, there is plenty of interest in Antony, but he's got one destination in his mind. It is Real Betis. He had such a fantastic loan spell with them last season. So as much as United will be positive about Benjamin Šeško coming in, they still do need to make these sales before the end of the transfer window. That said, you mentioned close to £200 million being spent in this transfer window if and when Šeško's deal is confirmed. But are they stopping there?
Well, I don't think they will. I mean, I think the key for Manchester United is getting those players out, the ones you've mentioned. I think Marcus Rashford to Barcelona is a great move for him. It's wages as well. It's not just necessarily transfer fee, it's big wages they're on. what else do Manchester United do? When I look at Manchester United, I think brilliant. That new forward line, great. But then I look at the midfield. Needs a bit of a revamp. And obviously there's talk of interest in Carlos Valverde in the midfield from Brighton. We know, as you've mentioned, interest in Donnarumma from PSG. We'll wait and see if that happens. I think that would be an upgrade on Onana. I'm sure that would be as well. So they still need to do business, Manchester United. However, you look at so many clubs and you think, are we ready for the start of the Premier League season? You'd say probably 18-19 would say no. But are you ready for day one? They'll say, let's give it a go.
You say, let's give it a go. You talk about Belieber. I mean, there's one thing being interested in Carlos Belieber, but Brighton are fantastic sellers and they do not want to sell. They insist he's not for sale. He's still got 3 years left on his contract. He's got the option of a further year. Brighton are under no pressure at all to sell Carlos Belieber. But it is clear that Manchester United are not done in this transfer window. We'll be talking about United a little bit later on in the show, I'm sure. But another big story that is emerging this evening is concerning Chelsea. We've been speaking about Chelsea's pursuit of Alejandro Garnacho. They are looking to make a number of sales in this transfer window as well. Now, the man behind us here, Nicholas Jackson, lots of talk about Nicholas Jackson in this transfer window. He has now told Chelsea that he wants to explore his options outside of Chelsea. So he wants to look at other clubs and whether there is interest in him, of which there is a lot. Chelsea are playing Bayer Leverkusen as we speak in a pre-season friendly. It kicked off at 7 o'clock. The team news was interesting, and it is clear that Nicholas Jackson is not part of the plans either from the Chelsea end, because Nicholas Jackson, Christopher Nkunku, both not in the matchday squad. They are 2 of a number of players that Chelsea are looking to consider offers for, and they have had a lot of inquiries, unsurprisingly, for Nicholas Jackson. Bayern Munich, Juventus, AC Milan have all explored the conditions of a deal. Newcastle are just keeping an eye on his situation. He would be a good signing for anyone who could get him, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and then Chelsea have to hurry up. He's only got 8 years left on his contract. Look, this is the model Chelsea have done, and it's working for Chelsea. They've had a great few months, so it's an interesting one because Chelsea have a lot of games next season. Of course, they're back in the Champions League. They've gone from Conference League to Champions League. They see themselves as a Champions League club, rightly so. They've just won the World Club Cup. And they'll value him highly. So, I think that'll go on for quite a bit of time, Nicholas Jackson, because he's got interest, as you've said.
Yeah, the game time's limited, isn't it? Because of the signings that they've made in this window.
Yeah, but, is João Pedro an out-and-out striker? How long will it take Liam Delap? Do you expect Liam Delap to play Saturday, Tuesday in the Champions League, Sunday, Wednesday? I think he'll still play at Chelsea, but does he have that feeling now, like, I don't feel like we know what strikers are like. They all like to feel like the number one, and he probably feels like a number 3 at the moment.
That's a really good point. So Chelsea, as well as these players who they're trying to bring in, we've talked so much about these departures. It's going to be so important because Enzo Maresca's always said he wants to work with that squad that is going to be available to him every week. He doesn't want the adjoining pitch having another 10 or 15 players that he doesn't want involved in the squad, is he?
I really enjoyed listening to Enzo Maresca last season, and he was quite ruthless. He did it a year ago with Raheem Sterling. Players have moved on. He bought Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Didn't work out, and he's sort of worked out the players who are ahead of him, but he's still got a good move to Everton. He's still got good money, and Chelsea sell well, and I expect them to sell well again if Nicholas Jackson does leave. Yeah, so Nicholas Jackson, currently a Chelsea player. Alexander Isak is still a Newcastle player, but for how long? We'll look at a difficult summer for Eddie Howe and his squad. That's up next. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Newcastle United remain in a difficult position as the window heads towards the final 3 weeks. We know about Alexander Isak's desire to join Liverpool and Newcastle's own efforts to bring players in. Johan Wissa has been a target for weeks, but with no deal yet, is there an air of desperation around the club's summer window?
That word desperate is where Newcastle are at. Of course, they've got the issues with Alexander Isak. He won't feature here tonight against Espanyol, nor tomorrow in the friendly against Atletico Madrid. As we know, he's been training on his own. And of course, that leaves Newcastle with just one striker in their ranks, and it's young 21-year-old William Asula. So if Isak was to go, Newcastle need 2, so it would be Wissa and 1 more. But so far, any move for Wissa has been protracted. It's been difficult for them to agree a deal with Brentford. I think 1, because Brentford have lost a number of players themselves this summer already, and 2, Newcastle have been unable to agree a fee.
Yeah, that was Keith Downey there at St James's Park talking about Newcastle's difficult window. Mike, I'm going to come to you in a moment to speak about just that. But just on Johan Wissa, there have been developments today, and that is the representatives of the Brentford forward, Johan Wissa, are in London. They hope that Brentford and Newcastle can strike a deal for the striker. There are likely to be developments one way or the other after the weekend. We are told that Newcastle are ready to move quickly for Yoane Wissa once Brentford can secure a replacement. Now, Brentford are interested in a number of forwards to replace Wissa, but also need, of course, to replace Brian Mbeumo, who went to Manchester United. They've earmarked Bournemouth's Dango Utara as a replacement for Mbeumo. There's all sorts of talk about interest in Ipswich Town's Omari Hutchinson as well. They've already gone in for Wissa, remember, £25 million. That was rejected. But Wissa, significantly, has made it clear over and over again he wants to leave, he wants to join Newcastle, and he's ready to travel as soon as he's given the green light. Brentford are in action tonight against Borussia Mönchengladbach. The matchday squad, unsurprisingly, does not include Yoane Wissa. So, Michael, let's talk about Newcastle then. It has been a very, very frustrating window, a very, very difficult one. This was supposed to be the window, wasn't it, when they were going to go for it. Champions League football back at St James's Park. A first trophy in over 50 years back to St James's Park. It just simply hasn't worked out that way.
It's unbelievable, really. I mean, I remember hearing a quote from Amanda Stavey, who's obviously no longer at Newcastle, when Newcastle won the League Cup, and she said this will be just the beginning for Newcastle United. But they've done so well over the last few years in terms of recruitment, and it all started with Kieran Trippier. Then you've got Bruno Guimaraes,